Most gardeners are, well, addicted to hoses. They install drip lines, timers, sprinklers, and then honestly, they wonder why their soil still dries out, compacts, and loses structure every season. The constant surface watering, it really just trains roots to stay shallow. Shallow roots mean fragile plants. Fragile plants mean more work, and then, we just call that normal gardening. There's an older method that actually builds soil so it holds water for decades. Not days, not weeks, decades. I've built these systems in open ground, adapted versions inside raised beds, and tested moisture retention against conventional beds. The difference is not subtle, it's structural. If you care about long-term productivity and less irrigation, subscribe now because this channel is about systems that compound over time. We forgot that soil is supposed to act like a sponge, not a sieve. Let's talk about the principles of hugelkultur. At its core, hugelkultur is all about building up the soil with layers of wood, organic matter, and compost, so it holds moisture and nutrients for years. By stacking logs, branches, leaves, and soil, you're creating a living, breathing mound that supports plant roots, conserves water, and, encourages beneficial soil life. Over time, these materials break down, releasing nutrients slowly and steadily, which means your plants can thrive with less input from you. Hugelkultur is really about working with nature's own recycling system, creating a sustainable foundation that keeps getting better, season after season. The lazy garden I'm talking about is essentially a deep organic reservoir system. Some folks call it hugelkultur. Others just call it buried wood beds. The name doesn't matter, honestly. The principle does. Wood buried beneath the soil acts like a long-term moisture battery. As it decomposes, it absorbs rainfall and irrigation, then releases moisture slowly back into the root zone. Instead of watering the surface constantly, you're building a subsurface reservoir that, feeds plants from below. When I built my first deep wood bed, I dug down about 18 inches in an open ground plot. In that trench, I laid down thick logs first, pieces about wrist to forearm thickness. On top of that, I layered smaller branches, then compost, then the original soil mixed with additional compost at roughly a 60% native soil to 40% compost ratio. The first year required moderate watering while the system settled. By year 2, irrigation frequency dropped dramatically. During dry spells, neighboring flatbeds dried out in 3 to 4 days. The wood core bed stayed moist at root level for over a week without irrigation. This isn't magic, it's physics and biology working together. Now let's talk about the technical side of things and, a few common mistakes. Building a successful wood core bed does take a bit of planning and, honestly, some trial and error. If you cut corners or skip steps, you might not get the results you're hoping for. So you want to pay attention to materials, layering, and of course, the overall design. Don't be discouraged if your first attempt isn't perfect. Every gardener learns a lot from those early missteps. You don't build this shallow and expect miracles. The biggest mistake I see is people tossing a few sticks under 6 inches of soil and expecting a self-watering system. That won't work. Depth matters. Volume matters. In open ground, I aim for at least 12 to 18 inches of buried woody material. In raised beds, which are naturally shallower, I dedicate the bottom third of the bed to wood and coarse organic matter. For a 4x8 raised bed that's 16 inches tall, I'll place about 5 to 6 inches of logs and branches at the base. On top of that, I add a nitrogen-rich layer, fresh grass clippings or composted manure, to offset nitrogen drawdown. Then I fill the remaining space with a soil compost blend. If you skip the nitrogen layer, you risk temporary nitrogen immobilization as microbes begin breaking down the carbon-heavy wood. That's where people run into yellow leaves and blame the method. The system works, but only if you balance carbon with nitrogen early on. When you invest in building your garden beds the right way, you're not just thinking about this season, but, well, setting yourself up for years of healthy soil and abundant harvests. It's a bit of a philosophy, really, putting in the effort now for benefits that continue to grow over time. Sustainable methods like these, honestly, they're all about working with nature, not against it. The payoff is healthier plants, less maintenance, and, in the long run, a more resilient garden ecosystem. The trade-off is front-loaded effort for long-term gain. Let's be honest. Digging deep trenches or filling raised beds properly takes work. This is not a quick afternoon fix, but you do it once. I've beds that are over 8 years old, and the wood inside is still partially intact. As it decomposes, it improves soil aggregation. The fungal networks that develop in these beds are noticeably more robust. You can see it when you pull back mulch, white mycelium running through the wood fragments. That fungal dominance improves nutrient cycling and moisture stability. In dry periods, plants don't wilt as quickly. In heavy rains, water infiltrates instead of running off. This is where most modern gardens fall short. They focus on feeding plants directly instead of building soil architecture. Now, when we think about roots and how they interact with different growing methods like hydroponics or traditional soil, the choices we make really matter. Selecting the right type of wood for your garden beds can also influence moisture retention and nutrient availability. It's all about creating the best environment for those roots to thrive, honestly. It's not just about watering less, it's about root depth. When moisture is available deeper in the soil profile, roots chase it downward. I've pulled tomato plants from conventional beds and from wood core beds to compare root systems. The difference is clear. In the wood core systems, roots extend deeper and branch more aggressively. Deeper roots mean better drought resistance and, well, more consistent nutrient uptake. That translates to steadier fruit production and less stress during those heat waves. In raised beds without a wood core, roots often circle in the upper half where irrigation is frequent. That's a design flaw, not a plant flaw. Hydroponic growers can still learn from this principle. You might think this only applies to soil gardeners, but it doesn't. Even in hydroponics, moisture buffering and root environment stability are everything. While you're not burying logs in a hydro system, the principle of creating buffering capacity still applies. Media like coco coir with added biochar increases moisture retention and stabilizes nutrient availability. It's the same philosophy: build resilience into the root zone instead of constantly correcting problems. In soil systems, buried wood is the long-term buffer. In hydro systems, engineered media plays that role. Not all wood works equally well, you know. Hardwood logs break down slower and provide longer-term structure. Softwood decomposes faster and contributes more quickly to fungal growth, but it doesn't last as long. I avoid treated lumber, painted wood, or anything contaminated. Only clean, natural wood belongs underground. If you have access to tree trimmings, fruit tree branches, or storm debris, that's ideal. I prefer pieces thicker than 1 inch in diameter. Small twigs alone won't create the same moisture reservoir effect. You also want to avoid packing the wood too tightly. Leave natural air gaps. Those gaps fill with water during rain and act as miniature storage chambers. So just to wrap things up, after you've chosen the right wood and left those important air gaps, it's all about layering the soil back in and letting nature do its thing. Over time, the wood will break down, feeding your plants and holding on to moisture. It's a simple, sustainable method that really pays off in the long run. Give it a try, and you'll see the difference in your garden beds season after season. Mulch on top completes the system. Even the best buried wood system fails if the surface is left bare. I maintain at least 2 to 3 inches of organic mulch on top of these beds. Straw, shredded leaves, or wood chips all work. Mulch reduces evaporation dramatically. Combined with the buried wood, you create a layered moisture management system, surface protection above, water reservoir below. In my climate, that combination has reduced irrigation frequency by nearly half compared to conventional tilled beds. Why did we forget this method? Because it doesn't sell equipment. It doesn't require constant inputs. It's not flashy. It's slow, structural gardening. Modern advice often focuses on surface-level solutions, more fertilizer, more watering systems, more gadgets, but soil used to be built deeply and intentionally. So the lazy part isn't about neglect. It's really about designing a system that reduces repetitive labor. You build the reservoir just once, you feed it organic matter every year, and it just keeps working. Simple as that. There are trade-offs, you know. The first year may show a bit of nitrogen competition if things aren't balanced properly. Some beds will settle as the wood decomposes, so you might need to top up the soil in year 2 or 3. Root crops like carrots, well, they really prefer finer soil up top, so I always keep the top 8 inches well textured and stone-free. The wood stays deeper, where it won't mess with the root shape. But honestly, these are just manageable adjustments, not actual flaws. This is really long-term soil infrastructure. If you want a garden that needs constant correction, just stick with shallow beds and frequent irrigation. But if you're after a garden that gets more resilient every single year, build it with depth and organic mass. The reason this system works so well for 15 to 20 years is because large wood takes that long to fully break down. As it decomposes, it shifts from structure to humus, which further improves water retention. You know, you're not just watering plants here, you're actually storing water in the soil. That's a whole different mindset. If you do this right, getting enough depth, balancing carbon and nitrogen, and keeping a nice layer of surface mulch, you'll end up with a garden that holds moisture through the heat, supports deeper roots, and cuts down on irrigation year after year. So, if this kind of long-term, soil-first thinking speaks to you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and share this video with another gardener who's tired of dragging hoses every summer. Growing better food isn't about working harder, it's about building smarter systems that keep working for you long after the digging is done.